MPLS Layer 3 VPN configuration with a static routing between PE and CE. In this scenario, again, I am going to show you how you can configure MPLS Layer 3 VPN, but in this video, I am going to configure route reflector, and you know that with route reflector, we can have more PEs, or for example, we can use route reflector for easier management and also for as a scalability solution in the service providers. In this scenario, I use 5 PE, router 1, router 2, router 3, router 4, and router 10. But in real network, maybe you encounter with more than 100, more than 500 PE routers, and in that scenarios you can use route reflector or also hierarchical route reflector. Let me to configure this scenario, and according to this scenario we can learn better about the configuration of MPLS Layer 3 VPN, about the route reflector. And also here, as you can see, we have again two customer, the customer A and also customer B. Customer A has 3 sites, site 1, site 2, and site 3, and customer B also has 3 sites, site 1, site 2, and site 3. In this scenario, the goal is to have the connectivity between the, for example, customer A sites and also customer B sites. We don't want to have any connectivity between customer A and also customer B with each other. This is the configuration of the previous scenario. As you can see here, this is the configuration of MPLS Layer 3 VPN with a static route between PE and CE. And you know that in previous scenario, I used the IBGP mesh, but here I'm not going to configure IBGP mesh. I'm going to configure route reflector. With some change, we can use this configuration. Let me start with the configuration of the IP addressing in this scenario, such as the previous scenario. First, the router 1. In router 1, we need to configure two interface, the ETH00. Look at here. I use interface ETH00 with the IP address of 10191. This is the IP address of the, for example, ETH00. And you know that in this scenario, we are going to use OSPF as the routing protocol, as an IGP inside of the service provider. And because this is a broadcast link, it's the best practice to configuring, to changing the network type to point-to-point. IP OSPF network point-to-point. Okay, this is the IP addressing, and also changing the network type, and then I enable the interface with no shutdown, the first interface. And then we are configuring one loopback interface. You know that we can use this loopback interface for establishing BGP neighborship or IBGP neighborship between router 1 and also route reflector. Because of that, we need this loopback 0 with the IP address of 192.168.254.1, 255.255.255.255/32. This is the configuration of R1. As you can see, I didn't configure ETH01 because ETH01 is one of the interface of the VRF of the customer A, and we will configure this interface in the future part of this scenario. And after that, we need to configure the IGP routing protocol, router OSPF1. In this scenario, I am going to use the OSPF. Because of that, router OSPF1 is first command. Then I configure router ID to 192.168.254.1, the IP address of the loopback 0. And then I enable the OSPF on the 10.191 interface with network 10.191 quad 0 area 0, this interface ETH00. Also, I enabled the network 192.168.254.1 quad 0 area 0. You know that we need to have reachability between the loopback zeros of the router 1, router 2, router 3, router 4, router 10, and router 9. Because of that, I enabled the OSPF on the loopback 0 of R1. This is the initial part of configuration of router R1, and here we didn't see any change with the previous scenario. Let me to configuring router 2. Again, host name is router 2 or R2. Interface ETH00's IP address, this interface is 10.292.255.255.255.0. Then IP OSPF network point-to-point. After that, I enabled again one loopback interface, 192.168.254.2/32 or quad 255. After that, router OSPF1 in router 2, router ID is 192.168.254.2, then the network 10.292 quad 0 area 0, and after that network 192.168.254.2 quad 0 area 0. This is the IP address of the loopback of router 2. After that, the configuration of the router 3, this router. Here we have hostname router 3, interface ETH00 with the IP address of 10.393.255.255.255.0. After that, IP OSPF network point to point. And then interface loopback 0, the interface of router 3, 192.168.254.3.255.255.255.255. And finally, we need to enable OSPF1 on the router 3, router OSPF1. The router ID is 192.168.254.3. The network statement is 10.393, this interface ETH00, quad 0 area 0. And then network 192.168.254.3, quad 0 area 0. Also, we have router 4. Router 4, this is the router 4, hostname router 4, and then ETH00 with the IP address of 10.494. 255.255.255.0, IP OSPF network point to point, no shutdown. Interface loopback 0, 192.168.254.4, quad 255, and then router OSPF1, router ID 192.168.254.4, network 10.494 quad 0 area 0, and then network 192.168.254.4 quad 0 area 0. After that, here we have router 9. Router 9 has five interface in this scenario. ETH00, this interface has IP address of 10.199.255.255.255.0 with the network point-to-point configuration. Then ETH01, this interface, 10.299.255.255.255.0 and then IP OSPF network point-to-point. And after that, ETH02, this interface, 10.399/24, IP OSPF network point-to-point. And finally, ETH03, 10.499.255.255.255.0 with the IP OSPF network point-to-point. And after that, we can enable OSPF and we can enable another interface in this scenario, ETH10. Let me to configure it, ETH10. Okay, the IP address of this interface, because this is the interface between router 9 and router 10, is 10.9.10.9. Okay, 255.255.255.0 IP OSPF network point to point. And finally, router OSPF1, the network statement is 10.199, 10.299, 10.399, 10.499 quad 0 area 0. And now we have another statement for example, 10.10, 10.9, 10.9, okay? Quad 0 area 0, because this is the IP address of the ETH10. And also I configured router ID with the 192.168.254.9. Also here, as you can see, we have a new P router R10. We need to configure the R10. Let me copy the configuration of the router for this router. After some change, we can use it for the router 10, copy. Then I'm going to paste it here after the router 9 R10. Here we have EN conft hostname R10. Then ETH00, this interface has IP address of 10.9.10.10. Okay, 10.9.10.10. This is the IP address of the ETH00 of router 10, then IP OSPF network point to point, and the loopback 0 interface of router 10 has this IP address 192.168.254.10.255.255.255.255. Router OSPF1, we need to enable router OSPF1. Again, router ID is 192.168.254.10, and the network statement is 10.9.10.10. Okay, quad 0 area 0. And also the next network statement 192.168.254.10 quad 0 area 0. This is the first part of configuration, the IP addressing. Let me to copy this configuration on the CLI of the routers, starting from the router 1, copying this configuration, pasting on the CLI of the router 1. You can also do this configuration with Notepad for easier for example, viewing and also easier configuration. okay, R1, then copy. We didn't have receive any message in any